Rain streaked the cafe window in uneven lines, blurring the city into a gray smear of motion and noise. The CEO sat alone at the corner table, untouched coffee cooling beside his phone, numbers and messages glowing on the screen like demands he couldn't silence. He hadn't noticed the small footsteps until the chair across from him scraped softly. A girl climbed up, too small for the seat, her boots dangling inches above the floor. She clutched something to her chest, fingers tight, knuckles pale. She pushed it forward with both hands as if offering something fragile and sacred. A stuffed rabbit, old and worn, its seam split, one glassy eye hanging by a thread. Her breath hitched before the words came. "Siri, can you fix my toy?" Her voice trembled, thin but brave. The cafe sounds dimmed, cups clinking, fading into a distant echo. "It was our last gift from Dad." The word last sank deep, heavy and final. He felt it before he understood it. A sudden pressure in his chest. A sharp memory he hadn't invited. He looked at her face, smudged with rain or tears, he couldn't tell. Her eyes searched his, not for money, not for power, but for hope. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. Yet this moment made his hands still. Outside, thunder rolled low like a warning. Inside, the world narrowed to the broken toy between them and a child waiting for an answer that could break her all over again. The cafe door burst open with a sharp clang, letting in a rush of cold air and rain. Conversations snapped apart. A tall man stood in the doorway, shoulders tense, jaw clenched, water dripping from his coat onto the floor. His eyes cut through the room, fast and hungry, scanning faces, tables, exits. His voice rose, rough and impatient, as he barked a name that made no sense to anyone else but carried urgency all the same. The girl stiffened instantly. Her small body went rigid like prey sensing a shadow overhead. She pulled the rabbit back, pressing it to her chest as if it could protect her, and slid closer to the CEO without asking. He felt her fear before she spoke, a quiet trembling that traveled straight into his bones. Years of late-night boardroom, battles and hostile takeovers had trained him to read danger, and this felt wrong, unpredictable, sharp, close. He shifted in his chair, angling his body toward her, his shoulder blocking her from the man's line of sight. The movement was instinctive, not calculated. His watch caught the cafe light, ticking louder in his ears than it ever had during a merger countdown. Time felt compressed, every second heavy. He lifted his gaze slowly, calmly, meeting the room rather than the man, projecting a stillness he didn't fully feel. Chairs scraped as people leaned back, uncertain. A barista froze behind the counter. The man took a step inside, rainwater pooling beneath his boots. The CEO's pulse thudded steady but hard. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't call for help. He stayed exactly where he was, a silent barrier, aware that one wrong movement could turn a frightened moment into something far worse. He slid off the chair and knelt beside her, the polished floor cold against his knee. The cafe felt too loud and too quiet at once, every breath magnified. He softened his voice, careful not to startle her. "What happened to it?" he asked, eyes on hers, not the toy. She hesitated, fingers tightening around the rabbit's torn seam, then loosened as if deciding to trust him with something heavier than a broken stitch. "Dad gave it to me before he went away," she said, words tumbling out in a rush she couldn't stop. "He said it keeps promises." Her voice cracked on the last word. The hum of machines, the clink of cups, all blurred. She looked down. "Then he didn't come home." Sentence landed between them like glass shattering in slow motion. He felt it slice through his practiced calm, opening a place he kept sealed. He took the rabbit gently, reverently, like it might feel pain. The fabric was thin with age, the mechanism silent, a life paused mid-beat. His hands, steady through crises, ruthless through negotiations, hesitated now. He breathed once, deep, anchoring himself. If he failed her, it wouldn't just be a toy that stayed broken. He focused, thumbs testing the tear, eyes narrowing with resolve. Somewhere behind him, the raised voices edged closer. But he shut the world out, choosing this small, fragile task as if it were the only thing that mattered. The noise behind them swelled, sharp and uneven, like a storm building inside the room. A chair scraped hard against the floor. Someone cursed under their breath. The CEO felt it in his spine before he heard it. The man was closer now. He didn't turn. He stayed with the toy, with the girl's wide eyes watching every movement of his hands, as if her breath depended on it. He slid a coin from his pocket, its edge worn smooth from years of habit, and eased it into the small opening beneath the rabbit's torn seam. The spring inside resisted, weak and bent, like something that had given up once already. His jaw tightened. Failure wasn't an option here. He twisted gently, listening, feeling for the moment the mechanism would catch. His heartbeat synced with the ticking of his watch, each second loud, unforgiving. The man's shadow stretched across the table, a presence heavy enough to press the air thin. The CEO felt it without looking, the way you feel heat before fire. His shoulders squared, his body angling just enough to block the girl from view. He threaded the loose seam with a toothpick, fingers precise, almost surgical, despite the tension crawling under his skin. One wrong move, one glance back, and everything could fracture. A click, small, fragile, almost imaginary. He froze, breath held. Then another click, stronger this time. The rabbit's chest lifted slightly as the mechanism reset. The girl sucked in a quiet gasp, hope flickering back into her eyes. The CEO exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Behind them, footsteps halted. In that suspended second, with danger hovering and a promise halfway restored, he realized how close he was to losing something far more important than control. A sudden shift in the air told him it was over before the sounds did. Firm voices cut through the tension, low and controlled. The kind that didn't need to shout to command attention. A hand appeared at the edge of his vision, then another, guiding the shouting man back toward the door. Protest flared, then dulled, swallowed by practiced authority. The cafe seemed to inhale all at once, releasing a breath it had been holding too long. The CEO didn't move until the door closed and the rain reclaimed the noise outside. Only then did his shoulders loosen, just a fraction. He finished the last stitch carefully, tying it off with a neatness that surprised even him. His thumb hovered over the button at the rabbit's back. For a split second, doubt crept in. What if it stayed silent? What if hope failed her again? He pressed. A soft hum filled the space between them, gentle and steady, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. The rabbit vibrated faintly in his hands, alive in the simplest way. The girl's eyes widened, then overflowed. She covered her mouth, a soundless sob breaking free as she reached for it. "It works," she breathed, as if saying it too loud might scare it away. He placed the toy in her arms, watching her hug it tight, her small body shaking with relief. The cafe returned to motion, cups lifted, murmurs resumed, but he stayed kneeling, anchored by the sight of joy cutting through grief. For the first time since the man had entered, the tension truly drained, leaving behind something warmer, quieter, and unexpectedly fragile. Peace earned in a single, mended moment. She didn't stop talking once the rabbit was back in her arms, words spilling out like they'd been trapped behind her ribs for too long. Hospital rooms with blinking lights, the smell of antiseptic that made her nose burn, her dad's hand, warm but weaker, squeezing hers as he tried to smile. The CEO listened without interrupting, every detail carving itself into him. Each sentence stripped away the distance his wealth usually bought him from pain. She told him how her father promised he'd be home soon, how he made the rabbit hum and said it would remind her he always keeps his word. Her voice wavered, but she kept going, eyes fixed on the toy like it was the only thing holding her steady. The CEO felt a tightness in his throat he hadn't known in years. Memories he buried under deadlines and victories stirred. Losses he never named. Goodbyes he never finished. He reached into his pocket and slid his card across the table. The movement automatic at first. Power Solutions Access, this was how he fixed things. But the girl frowned, confused, and pushed it back with a careful finger as if it might hurt him. Something shifted then. He closed his hand over the card, shaking his head gently. "Keep promises," he said instead, the words heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. Her eyes softened. She nodded, hugging the rabbit closer, its hum steady against her chest. The CEO felt the echo of that hum inside himself. A reminder of something simple and rare. Being present mattered more than being powerful, and in that quiet exchange the tension finally loosened its grip, leaving behind a connection neither of them would forget. Footsteps rushed toward them, hurried and uneven, cutting through the calm that had just settled. A woman appeared at the edge of the table, breathless, hair damp from the rain, eyes wide with fear that hadn't yet learned it was over. She scanned the girl from head to toe, hands hovering as if afraid to touch and make her disappear. "I'm so sorry," she said, voice breaking, pulling the child into her arms. The girl clung to her, the rabbit pressed between them, humming softly like a fragile promise holding them together. Relief collapsed into the woman's shoulders as she realized her daughter was safe. Tears slid freely now, unashamed. She looked up at the CEO, confusion and gratitude mixing in her gaze. He stood slowly, aware of the space he occupied, suddenly careful not to overwhelm the moment. He offered a small nod, nothing that demanded thanks, nothing that made him bigger than the act itself. The girl slipped free and held up the rabbit, pride shining through lingering sadness. "He fixed it," she said, voice steady now, stronger. "Dad said helpers show up." The words hit him harder than the earlier danger. His chest tightened and he felt his eyes sting before he could stop it. He looked away for a heartbeat, grounding himself. The cafe felt warmer, brighter, as if the rain outside had washed something clean inside too. The mother mouthed a thank you he didn't need to hear. He stepped back, giving them space, feeling the weight of the moment settle quietly into him. Whatever tension had brought him to his knees moments earlier transformed into something deeper, an understanding that some rescues don't leave headlines, only echoes that last a lifetime. Rain softened into a steady whisper outside as they moved toward the door together, the cafe's warmth clinging to them for a final moment. The girl turned back, lifting the rabbit high, its gentle hum cutting through the fading clatter of cups. She waved like she was sending a secret only he could understand. He felt it settle in his chest, a small aching glow he hadn't felt in years. He remained standing after they left, watching the door close, the bell chiming once like a quiet farewell. The city resumed its pace beyond the glass, but he didn't rush to follow. His phone buzzed again, meetings, numbers, urgency, but it felt distant now. He sat back down, coffee cold, screen dark. For the first time in a long while, success felt smaller than a promise kept. The rabbit's hum echoed in his mind, steady and alive, reminding him that some things broken don't need power to be fixed, just time, attention, and a heart willing to stop and kneel. He stayed seated long after the door shut, the bell's chime still vibrating in the air like a held note. Outside, headlights smeared across the wet street, strangers hurrying past with lives he would never touch. Inside, the cafe felt strangely hollow, as if something essential had just passed through and left a quiet behind. His phone lit up again in his palm. Missed calls, urgent messages, but the weight of it felt wrong now, too loud for what the moment required. He turned the screen face down. The image of the girl lifting the rabbit replayed in his mind, the soft hum cutting through fear, through grief, through rain. He felt a tightening behind his ribs, an ache he usually outran with work and control. He let it stay. For once, he didn't rush to bury it. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the scent of coffee and damp wool, grounding himself in the now. When he finally stood, it wasn't with the sharp certainty of a man used to winning. It was slower, deliberate, like someone stepping out of a memory he intended to keep. As he walked toward the door, the rain greeted him again, cool and real. Somewhere out there, a promise was humming against a child's heart, and for the first time in years, he felt like he'd kept one too.